Hello. Bit of a physically straining work week, and of course, as per usual, I meant to do this yesterday or the day before, but last night I got distracted by another side project, more a thing for friends than anything like this or other things I plan to make and release to the world, but still it occupied my entire night. I didn't stop working on it till I got home from work today, and I put the finishing touches on it and then uploaded the thing. I was even working on it on my lunch break and before work. It's a sequel to an old video I made 3 years ago now. Long time ago. Again, it's just for friends really, but I had fun making it while I was in it. It feels good to have made something and completed it, like really. The last thing I can say I've completed in its actuality, if that's how that word is used, actuality. Who knows? Anyway, the last thing I can say I've completed in its actuality was the model I made before school was over, back in March, I think, around then. Anything else I've done in the last few months has really been either very, very small or it's still left unfinished, sort of in the back of my mind. The next thing on the plate for me is the commission. I intend on tackling that as much as I can tomorrow, and hopefully, though my timelines have been vastly inaccurate for any of my projects, hopefully I'll have it done by Thursday evening if I really put my head down and stick to it. It's become very easy to forget. The tricks I've found help me focus. I find putting on things that would usually put me to sleep, videos like that, while I'm working on things, helps a lot more than putting on music. I wish my setup was in a state where I felt comfortable taking it to a cafe or something, or I wish my work was the kind of thing that if somebody looked over my shoulder they wouldn't think much of it really. But when you're drawing people or modelling people, they tend to end up naked at some point in the process, or at bizarre angles, or questionable this or that, right? And I'm honestly afraid of being judged of that kind of thing in public. Still, maybe the next time I have a more graphic design related task ahead of me, I'll take it to a cafe or something. I'm now thinking to myself, maybe I could start going to the local library, not for books, but just as a space to work on things in relative comfort, but not in my own home. Working on things like music and, well, anything that I'd need my recording equipment for is out of the question, but things like graphics and models and scenes, animations even, probably just fine. I used to end up in the library quite a lot as a kid. It's sort of the air-conditioned halfway point between my house and the place I went to middle school. So on the hot summers where I would bike uphill both ways, so to speak, I would often stop in the library downtown to catch my breath and maybe see if there was a vending machine willing to accept what little coinage I had. I've always loved my bike. Not that I've ever really had a specific bike I've been attached to. Any bike will do so long as its tyres aren't flat, though that hasn't stopped me before, and its wheels are on straight. Any bike should do. But I've always liked biking. My chair is squeaking, like back of the thing. That's odd. Anyway, yeah, doesn't matter what the bike is, I've always liked riding the bike. When I was very young, I think my first bike injury was in a summer. Maybe I was in grade 1 or grade 2. I'm not sure. But my parents, of course, had to work their jobs, and they'd hired babysitters to watch me and my brothers. And me and my brothers, the three of us, insisted we take our bikes to the park, and of course the babysitters obliged. And at the local park by my house, there is a hill. Now at this age, it's more of just a mound, really. Like, it's no more than a few feet up, and no more than like 20 meters wide, right? But as a kid, that thing's many, many times your height. So along one of the ramps of the thing, one of the steeper ramps, was sort of a ridge that had developed in the side of it that fit a bike tire quite well, and kids on the playground with bikes would dare each other to ride down along the ridge. The hill itself didn't grow grass very well and was quite bumpy, so for anybody who is like under the age of 8, it would be a little difficult to not fall over when faced with that kind of bumpy terrain. Still, I insisted on being brave, and I attempted it, and I made it all the way down, but at the last bump of the whole thing down that ridge, I lost my balance and flew off the bike. Thinking about it now, I can't even remember the pain. But I know I started crying and I thought I was going to die. I really did think I was going to die, so as my sort of last rites, I requested that one of the babysitters retrieve my favourite blankets and drape them over my body. And I laid there for a while. They did bring my blankets, actually, and after that, I think I was fine, but I have a very vivid memory of not the faces of either of the babysitters or even the bike I was riding, but the way the sunlight broke through the blanket that was draped over my head. A blanket which I'm still in possession of. It was actually made custom by somebody my parents knew who was quite old. It's one of a set, and they were both made for me when I was born, and I'm still quite attached to them. I keep them in a box now because I refused to sleep without them until about high school, and even then I stopped sleeping with them because they were falling apart. One of them had been repaired a dozen times, sewn back together at the seams, but if I kept sleeping with them, there'd be nothing left but tatters, so I had to put them away. Still, that image of the sunlight breaking through, specifically the one that had sheep on it. If I was a better painter, I'd paint the picture. Maybe I will try that one day. If I try it any time in the near future, I will find some way to share it on here. Anyway, I've always loved riding my bike. That incident didn't put me off of it at all. Maybe even then I knew it was like a shortcoming of my own ability. Right? It wasn't the bike's fault that I tipped over and fell. Maybe I scraped my knee, I don't remember. So I continued to bike a lot. Later in elementary school, I had made a group of friends who all lived in my neighborhood, relatively speaking, and we all would bike around the town, go to the convenience store, bike to somebody's house, hang out on their couch. And it wasn't the same person's house every day either. It was a lot of fun. I think that happened for 2 summers maybe. Or maybe it was 1 summer, I can't remember. But I remember thinking for the longest time that that summer would be the best one of my life. That was maybe 2013, maybe, but I was completely wrong. Many, many better summers were to come. When I was in high school and middle school, well, we'll start with middle school. When I was in middle school, of course, in the summers I would bike home, well, to and from school if I could help it, but home from school as much as I could. On days with exams and days that just happened to be short for the purpose of teacher meetings, I would bike home in that afternoon light I love so much, visit the library, and there was a candy store downtown that had a wide selection of import candy, and I would try a new one every time. I'm quite fond of Laffy Taffy. There's a sort of freedom I had. I had given myself at that time by not caring about any of my academics, really. Like, I didn't like math, science, history, or whatever, right? None of it. None of it really appealed to me. So I never took anything home with me. I'd shove papers into my bag, homework, never to be seen again. I'd go home and not think about school until I had to get up for it the next day. And there was a freedom in that I haven't really felt since. Because in high school I had to sort of lock in just a little bit. And in uni, I still don't know what to call my thing I'm doing. I've had to take everything home with me because class doesn't give adequate time. I do miss that sense of freedom, that abandon. I've mentioned before how I would ride my bike home from school and summer school and high school, but I didn't get my license to drive until I was well out of high school. So the bike was my main mode of transport to and from my, at the time, partner's house, to and from any friends' houses, or anywhere I wanted food or drink. It was a lot of effort, and I certainly didn't have the freedom to, say, bring a guitar and an amp with me, like I do now with a car. But again, there's a freedom in not being able to carry much with you. I've attempted to recapture it recently by biking to places whenever possible, with the exception of work, because of how tired it makes me. But when going to friends' houses, so long as I'm not already late, I will bike. Or if I have to go to the convenience store and I have time, I'll bike. I have one friend who lives I think, let's measure it now. Let me check. Yeah, you get keyboard sounds. I just have to find their neighborhood. They live roughly 11 kilometers away. Of course, depending on the route you take. My town sits in a bit of a valley, so usually when you have to go somewhere, you have to cross the river at some point. And to cross the river means to go downhill and then uphill again. So I often have to plan my bike routes around where the hills are easiest to climb. I used to have a lot of fun finding... Well, no, that's not the way to phrase that. There were times when, for a bit when I was out of high school, to surprise my partner, I would wake up really, really early in the morning and get coffee at the local mall on the way there. I'd bike all the way, 2 drinks in hand, and get to their house before they even woke up with coffee and such. Doing such a thing like that now for anybody would be trivial because I have a car, but biking uphill with 2 hot drinks in the middle of the summer was something. And I'd do it again, but I don't have anybody who needs that from me right now. Perhaps if I wake up early enough tomorrow, I'll go for a bike ride. I got completely lost on a tangent. My most memorable bike rides really were to that friend who lives 11 kilometers away. It's quite far when you have to go uphill, which Google Maps does not account for. Like, if you know trigonometry, then you know that going uphill is more distance than going downhill, or not downhill, than going flat, right? The slope is longer. It has to be. It's the only way it makes mathematical sense. But I've always biked to their house for their birthdays and such, with the exception of the last one. It sort of started as a happenstance because, well, I didn't have a car. But then, as we all became adults, their parties started to involve alcohol, and of course you can't mix alcohol and cars, so I'd bike instead. Last time I didn't drink, and there wasn't that much alcohol really, so it wasn't like the temptation was there. But the time before that, and the time before that, I did bike. And what seems to happen a lot, like more than once, is I'll bike there and the weather will be fine, but when I have to bike home, it begins pouring. And I'm biking downhill, going like 30 to 40 kilometers an hour on a bicycle in the middle of the night, in the rain. And that sounds incredibly dangerous, but with how desolate the streets become at the hours I leave their house, It's not. There's nobody around. It feels so freeing to sort of give in to the rain. Forget about, oh no, my clothes are going to get wet, or my hair is getting wet, or this or that, and just let yourself be soaked. I love biking in the rain. I've just spent 25 minutes talking pretty exclusively about biking. The whole enjoyment of biking thing does feed back into my terrible habit of walking the same paths over and over again. Because the places I frequently bike to are places I've frequently been before. Places where people I knew or know were with me. Or places that I can go back to, but nobody's there. Like the place where I went to middle school. I'm not really friends with anybody I was friends with when I started middle school, with the exception of my like 5 closest friends. But they weren't the ones I hung out with, they just happened to be in my class at the time. I wouldn't have called them my friends, really. My friends were a different set of people from them at the time. It's odd to me to think about how my relationships with those people sort of devolved. I think what started it really was a fight between... Oh, there's a bug. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that bug, it just sort of whizzed past. I think my window cover isn't on properly. Anyway, I think my relationship with those people sort of devolved when one of them moved on to high school and 2 of them started fighting, and then the rest of us were sort of just left behind. I think I actually still have one of them added on Steam, though I've never spoken to them, like, outside of middle school. That's funny to think about. I kind of want to check, but it's not that relevant. I want to apologize if the audio in this one is a bit off. I've adjusted my recording equipment for a different type of recording and that I was doing for a previous project, and I've yet to properly readjust things, and I sort of just jumped into this all willy-nilly. So if the audio comes out a bit off, for one, tell me, because I'm not going to know. And for 2, I'm sorry. I will do better next time. I thought I saw someone Actually, coincidentally, someone from that friend group that dissipated in early middle school, I thought I saw them at my work today, and having had that happen, it didn't send me into a panic or any kind of emotional distress that seeing certain other individuals I no longer talk to would do. But it did get me thinking, how would I summarize my life into a few sentences so they can sort of catch up since the last time I talked to them? Because the last time I talked to them wasn't that long ago, relatively speaking, to others in the friend group. It was only 3 years ago, I think. Maybe a little longer than that, not sure. There was a while where we weren't on speaking terms, but we patched up and sort of reconciled the strangeties of a friendship that was, and we're now just sort of distant acquaintances. Like, if I called, I think they'd answer, but I don't have anything to call them about. That kind of distance. Either way, if I had to summarize the last 3 years of my life, I'd put it like this. And maybe you can, if you want to participate, you can do this as well, because I'm not providing any specific details really, just like a 1 or 2 sentence summary, bullet points of what has happened over the last 3 years for you. For me, it's been had a job, lost a job, I derailed my train of thought there. I had a job, lost a job, went to Japan, came back from Japan, got a job, entered school, fell in love, had my heart broken, mended, fell in love again, had my heart broken again, got betrayed, had arguably the worst week of my life, mended, got betrayed again, and now we're here. I think that's all the key events of the last 3 years. Saving for things like, oh, I went camping, or this or that, I don't think there's anything major. It's hard to sort of, what's the word, quantify what is really important to your story or not. Like, do people really need to know how you got to your current emotional state? Do they want to know? Maybe they more want to know where you've been and not what you've done. I don't know. Either way, feel free to summarize your last 3 years, bullet points, if you're comfortable with that kind of thing. If you're not, that's fine too. Just do it in your head, and maybe that kind of thing will bring perspective to your life. Like, oh wow, I've actually done a lot. Or maybe you'll go, oh, I haven't done that much. And if you're going, oh, I haven't done that much, then more likely than not, you just can't remember what it is you have done. That was weird. My chair made a loud noise. Yeah. It takes a lot more willpower to do literally nothing than doing something. We use the word nothing to blanket so many things that could be considered hobbies or pastimes, that when people ask you, what have you been up to, what have you been doing, you just say nothing. Because to you, your hobbies and your pastimes and the things you enjoy don't count to you, when they should, probably. I'm not a sociologist. I don't know. I don't make the societal rules, is what I'm saying. So take my advice with a grain of salt. Anyway, my voice is getting a little dry. I do have water, thank God, but I think I'm going to end this one here so I can go to bed. If you're falling asleep while watching this, good job, keep going. And maybe this is something I've done. If you notice that the video has ended and you're barely awake, don't have autoplay on. Just go to the next, or just turn your phone off. Sorry, the intrusive thoughts one there. Just turn your phone off. You're more likely to fall asleep without the stimulus, even if the stimulus was the thing helping you fall asleep in the first place. Because once you're sleepy, it's done its job, and it can turn off. You don't need the constant input. So again, if you're falling asleep and the video ends, turn off your phone or your computer or whatever it is you're watching or listening to this, I guess, through in your bed. Turn it off. You'll be fine. If you're already asleep and I've woke you up, refer to the previous advice. And if you're waking up, good morning. I'll make another morning audio Friday, I think. Yeah, Friday. So look forward to that, I guess. I can't say when in the day it will be uploaded, but just know it'll be there eventually. Yeah. Anyway, good night. Bye-bye.